So I get to be up here for the next couple Sundays. So this Sunday and next Sunday. Conrad is away on vacation. After having last Sunday back together, he decided that was ridiculous and he just took off. So I'm just kidding. He actually had a couple weeks of holidays booked well in advance. So I don't often have like 2 Sundays strung together though. That's actually quite uncommon. Maybe one other time that's happened. So in Sunday school and in youth events, yeah, that happens and we'll carry on with the theme. But usually when I'm here, it's just one off, and it's like, okay, let's talk about that and carry on. So because we're here for 2, figured might as well try and string a couple together, and that tied with some things that maybe I've been discovering or rediscovering, or things that I've found interesting lately. So that's kind of what's fueling all of this. What I've been learning, and also what God has shown up for me this week and last as preparing for this. So I going that direction. Now I'm pretty sure it's a country song that it just sounds so country songish, that I've heard this before, of this little phrase of yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. And it just has country song written all over it. And so there's a lot of truth to it as well, though, and it's catchy to remember, and I believe it. Is that, yeah, yesterday is history, obviously, and we don't know what's going to happen in the future yet, so there's mystery there. And all we have is the gift of the present that we get to live in right now. So that's a bit of how this is going to look over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be a gift as we look at the present. And really, all we have to do is live in the present. The past we've already lived, and that's valuable. But we live in the present, and the future can do wonderful or terrible things to us as we think about it. But we don't have to live in the future. We're only ever in the present. Eventually, the future becomes the present. We live that, and it becomes the past. But both the past and the future can affect how we live in the present. And so today we're going to look at how the past affects the way we live in the present. And then next week we'll look at, or in the future next week, we'll look at how that affects our present as well. So it definitely, the past informs our present, because we're not people that just exist in the middle of nothing. We have things that have influenced us, people that have shaped us, events that have made us to be the way that we are. So the past really affects us, it shapes us in a sense. It informs us as well. We know what maybe has gone poorly or well in the past, so hopefully we can make wise decisions for the present. And things that are not even, things that maybe we didn't even experience can shape us in where we are in the present as well. So the past can go back a really long ways and have a really big effect on us. And then we have our own lived past, and we know within our own life experiences of things that it's like, okay, don't do that again. I remember that went poorly, or the second time, it still went poorly, so now I really know I shouldn't do that again. So we can learn from that, and it can help us in the present. So the past can act as kind of a mold, and not like the spray it with Javex or bleach mold, but the mold like you're making something mold. So there's a couple different ways you can have molds. You can have a mold that's made of something rigid that's not going to change, so a steel or aluminum, and usually if you're using that kind of a mold to produce something, then the thing you're putting in there to produce is going to be melt at a lower temperature. So a lot of plastic junk that we have, or some good stuff too, is made with injection molding. So you have like an aluminum or steel mold that has, when you put these two parts together, the mold together, there's a cavity in the middle that looks like the part you want. So you pump some hot plastic in there, you pop the mold apart, and then you've got the little widget that you want to have. And you can keep making a whole bunch of those. You pop that one out, put it together, put more plastic in, and keep doing that over and over again, and produce a lot of parts that way. And not just plastic, other lower melting temperature materials you do that with as well. So we can produce parts that way with rigid molds. That mold is the same, it just keeps producing parts. And now there's things in history that have made us to be the way we are, that have just produced humans and their mindset, the way we think, the way we act, in that rigid sense, where it's just like, it just keeps producing stuff like this. But that never seems to happen forever. Eventually that mold gets destroyed and you produce a new thing, because you figure out a new widget that's better than the previous widget, so you want to build a new one instead. And so those rigid molds, those more permanent molds, they can be destroyed, and you can make a new one as well. That's one type of mold. Another type of mold, which I find incredibly fascinating, is how we make more like cast iron. So something that's going to melt at a much higher temperature, and you need something that can stand up to, you need a mold body that can stand up to that sort of heat. So something like, so cast iron, and most of you, a lot of you have seen cast iron parts. If you haven't, go look under the hood of your vehicle, unless it's aluminum block, then it won't work. But find stuff around that looks kind of sandy. Because most of that cast iron stuff is made with a sand mold. That's why it has that texture of roughness. That's the actual sand that was used to make the mold, pour the iron into to make your part. So cast iron though, you don't have this part where you make it, pop it apart, reuse that mold again. You have something that looks like the part, and then you put that on something smooth and walks around and you pour sand over it. Pack it in, and then you do that with the other half of the part, put them together, and pour your iron into there with a bit of venting, and you've made your part. And instead of just popping the mold apart, you smash the sand off of it, get it all cleaned off, and that sand gets reused to make another mold to be used again. So now this is really cool because you're not just using the same rigid mold, you're using sand, which can make a lot of the same part, but that sand can be used to make a whole bunch of different parts over and over again, with a lot of different variety. So with these two different ideas of mold, we're going to look at the way that our past can affect our present and the way that we work with that in our present as well. So a mold that can be rigid and a mold that can be reused and reused in different ways. So I told you I was going to get your feedback a little bit here, and this is where that's coming. So if your heart is racing, that'll wake you up. There have been moments throughout history, and there will continue to be moments throughout history, where those rigid molds get broken and remade to something different. Now, I'm curious, what sort of mold-breaking moments can you think of, whether it's been in your lifetime of history, or when you look back further, like this is when something really changed. This was a mold-breaking moment. So just to give you an example of what I'm thinking of, and then you can give me the examples as well, because I'll never think of them all. Something like 9/11. So there had been terrorism before 9/11. There was terrorism after 9/11. But with 9/11 happening, the way that security of air travel changed was permanent. That was a permanent change. The mold was broken. It was remade to what we exist with today with air travel and security. So 9/11 was a mold-breaking moment. What other things? And I won't bring a mic, but you can shut it out and I'll yell it back to everyone else through the mic. So what other things have been mold-breaking moments?
Treaties.
Say it again.
Treaties.
Treaties. Okay. Yep. The birth of your first child changes everything. Absolutely. Coronavirus. Yeah, this is a pretty mold-shattering thing. Things are changing. We never used to have ropes. We have to use it. What else? I got other things like pop culture-wise, an iPhone was a mold-breaking thing that really changed how smartphones took off. Netflix for online streaming really changed TV for a lot of people. What else? I have a couple of really obscure ones that I find fascinating, but you guys some other ones. Electricity, yeah, absolutely. And especially like hooked up onto the grid, probably too, right? Yeah.
GPS.
Oh, GPS. You can finally read your manuals in the tractor. Got all this free time. And then that paired with Twitter, and look what it's created. Farmers with a lot of time and a lot of opinions. I like that, that's good. There's some going back a bit farther. I remember a professor talking about this, how a stirrup on a saddle was like a mold-breaking moment. He didn't say mold-breaking moment, but I am. Because before stirrups, to hang on a horse, you just had to hang on. So when you think of warfare with that, if you're got armor or whatever else, you're trying to just hang on to this horse while killing people. That's not an easy thing to do. And with stirrups, it allows a lot more of those the knights later on when they could stay on the horse actually. So weird, but just something small as that stirrup would be a big change that way. Printing press as well. As that kind of has a combination with our church history too. When we look back at the Reformation, that Martin Luther and the thing, and him as well. There's some mold-breaking moments there too. And what he was doing wouldn't have had the same effect if it were not for the printing press, most likely. And so that really changed things as well. So there, and we can spend all morning on this and drag it out, but we won't anymore. That there's these mold-breaking moments where something happens, whether it's someone trying on purpose or something creative, or something happening to a culture, a country, humanity, that we figure out how to work with later on. And it shapes the way that we do things, and we are the way we are now because of a lot of these mold-breaking moments along the way. Now, nobody mentioned Jesus as a mold-breaking moment, but he was a pretty significant figure, I think. Maybe if we're in Sunday school, we would mention Jesus. But Jesus was an incredible mold-breaking moment. Jesus coming, so it's God coming to earth. It's a pretty big deal. And so we have this Jesus finally showing what God is really like. Jesus being the full color picture of what God is like. You want to know what God is like? You look at Jesus. He pointed that out himself, and he's just the best, the clearest picture of what God is actually like. Someone look at the Old Testament, and they say like, well, that didn't really look a whole lot like Jesus there. But the Old Testament, they're figuring that out as well, because God was introducing them to himself, and it took a bit of figuring out along the way as they were doing that. And so sometimes they got it right, sometimes they got it wrong, but they were learning as they were going. We see that so much of the figuring out, and God being patient with people and still showing himself to be who he is. And then Jesus comes and is like, this is who God really is. We get the whole thing in one package. And so there was this mold of how people had come to understand who God was like, and it was definitely affected by the culture around them, but God was always drawing them to something better than the nations around them. When we look at the Old Testament Israelites. But there were some cracks showing in the mold already. There were some moments where you could see God for who he was really like, and it didn't fit with the nations around them. And so they were learning to see what God was really like. I just want to point us to a few of these examples, because it's really cool to see these cracks. One of them would be in the book of Judges. Well, actually, the book of Judges. Judges is such a fantastic book as a kid, because it's got all the fun stories of heroes doing really amazing things, and again, he's killing people. But boy, was it something else when you got someone that can go use the jawbone of a donkey and take out a bunch of other people, and ripping off doors, and using an army of 300 to conquer so many more. These are fun stories. But Judges shows the crack in the mold in a way of, this isn't what God is like, but looking that this actually isn't working. Because at the beginning of Judges, we have okay, the conquest didn't quite work, so this is where we're at. And we have this cycle of people following God, falling away, and then God allowing their enemies to overtake them, and then calling out again, and then God helping them, and then this cycle happening over and over again. And then these imperfect judges who lead within the ability that they can, and God uses it regardless of any shortcomings and through any shining moments they have. But at the beginning of Judges, we just have these little skirmishes with the neighboring nations, and by the end of Judges, we have a full-out civil war with tens of thousands of Israelites dying. I think a really good example that everyone doing what's right in their own eyes does not work, and violence clearly did not work as well. So kind of this, all right, that didn't work. Let's try with a little bit more of what I want you to do, God's saying. And so we see that in the prophets, of them saying, God wants hearts turned to him, not sacrifices. What's inside matters so much more than these actions. And here's a very specific story I want to point us to, which won't be here long, but this one's so good. It's in probably 1 Kings, chapter 6. And I'm just going to go through it real quick so you read it more carefully on your own time. But it's this example of, okay, Jesus taught, and so we can take this lens of Jesus and look back and be like, oh yeah, God is really showing his true colors here. Because Jesus taught that we were to love God, to love our neighbors as ourselves, but even love our enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. That shows up through Jesus and through Paul a lot. is to love those who are against you. And so we have this example in, is it 1 Kings 6 or is it 2 Kings? That's probably 2 Kings. That doesn't fit there at all. Maybe it's 7. I just wrote down Kings 6, that's why. Oh yeah, that works way better. 2 Kings 6. So we have this story of the Syrians that are around Israel and wanting to attack Israel. And so they would do this, and then Elisha would tell the king, like, okay, well, the Syrians are going to be there because God showed this to me, so you go over there. And so he keeps doing this, and then the Syrian king is just furious about this. And so he says, will you not show me who of us is for the king of Israel? He thinks it's a traitor in his own kingdom. And his servant said, none, O king. But Elisha the prophet who is in Israel tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. And so then he said, okay, well, where is he? I want to get him. And so they find him, they show up, and this is what happens here. So they show up, the servant of God, and his servant, Elisha's servant, is like, this is bad, there's an army here, this is not good. And Elisha's just all chill about it, and just prays that God will open his eyes, says there's more on our side. He sees the hills filled with the Lord's army. And so the servant comes down a little bit. And so this army's there, and then Elisha goes out, he prays to the Lord, strike them with blindness. So the army struck with blindness, and then Elisha says to him, this is not the way. This is not the city you're looking for. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. And so he takes them to the king, takes them right into the city, and then says, okay, God, open their eyes. And they look like, oh man, we are here, this is our enemy. And then the king, looking at them, looking at Elisha, like, what do I do? Do I get to kill them? And Elisha, no, feed them. And so he throws a great feast for them, sends them on their way, and they never bothered him again. Now that looks a whole lot like Jesus. Love your enemy, and look at the outcome that happens in this. Instead of let's just take things into our own hands and start punching people. It's so cool to see those stories. What a great picture of the mold showing cracks. Of God being like, I'm going to wreck this thing eventually, and you're going to see what it really needs to be like. And so Jesus comes, Jesus is born, and the mold is truly shattered. First of all, in this miraculous birth, is born of a virgin, starts fulfilling prophecies of where he's going to be born with all this, and then he grows up, and he's not what everyone expected, but it's so much better once they finally figure out what he's actually like and who he actually is. And now there'd be probably a bunch of moments that would be these actual like mold-shattering moments in Jesus' life of where it says like, okay, now things have truly changed. Like that virgin birth, that's a pretty big deal. That could be one already. Definitely his death on the cross. Definitely his resurrection. Those are very significant moments. And there's one as well in a story in here that I think is a really big part of it as well. And this is where I want us to direct our attention to in Luke chapter 9. And it's the Transfiguration. So this shows up in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, not John. And I was trying to figure out which one would make the most sense to read from. So there's one part in Luke that I really wanted to include. So okay, Luke makes the most sense. But Luke starts off in this weird way that I didn't want to use Luke, but ended up in Luke anyways. So Luke chapter 9, verse 28 is where it will be. So the leading up to this is just like Jesus had fed 5,000 people, and then we have Peter confessing that Jesus is the Messiah, which is a really significant moment. Like, who do you say that I am? You are the Christ. You are the Messiah. And then he says, okay, don't tell anyone. Good, you guys got it. And then we have this Jesus being really real with them, because he speaks in parables so much with them that, and with the other people, that sometimes we get these moments where he's just with his disciples and he gives them the straight up, this is what's going on. And he tells them, I'm going to the cross, I'm going to die, but I'm going to come back to life again. And then Peter has this like, this isn't going to happen, and Jesus calls him Satan, and then that's where we find ourselves in this story now, is Peter having, like, we have the miracle of feeding the 5,000, we have Peter getting it right, Peter getting it wrong, Peter's just fantastic. Just like a verbal processor, it seems like. Just has to talk things out. And whether for good or bad, boy, that makes things entertaining for us sometimes. And then Jesus saying this, like, that to follow me is not always going to be easy. And here we go. Luke chapter 9, verse 28. Now about 8 days after these things, so this is the part that I don't like already, is that about 8 days after. I don't know what Luke's getting at here, because both Matthew and Mark say about 6 days after. And the 6 days really fit with some other stuff. And the 8 days, I just could not find an explanation for. So I don't know the answer to that, but that's one thing that I don't get, and I don't know why it's there. 8 days after these sayings, he took with him Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And as he was praying, the appearance of his face was altered, and his clothing became dazzling white. And behold, 2 men were talking with him, Moses and Elijah. They appeared in glory and spoke of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and those who were with him were heavy with sleep. But when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men who stood with him. And as the men were parting from him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. And it says, not knowing what he said. Again, Peter's a verbal processor. What in the world is going on? I just need to say words because that's how I react. And so that's what he says. And in Mark, it has this, Peter didn't know what he was saying. And so I really wonder, like, Peter telling this story afterwards, if it was kind of this, like, yeah, this is what was going on, that's what I said. Like, I had no idea what to say. That was crazy. It's kind of those, I don't know if any of you sleepwalk, or remember sleepwalking or sleep talking, but usually it's pretty ridiculous what you say in those moments. And I just kind of imagine that with Peter, I'm like, I don't know what to do, this is what I did. Not knowing what he said. So verse 34, as he was saying these things, a cloud came and overshadowed them. And they were afraid as they entered the cloud. And a voice came out of the cloud saying, This is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him. And when the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. They kept silent and told no one in those days anything of what they had seen. Must have been cool after Jesus' death, resurrection, and then ascension as well. When they got to tell this story, like, hey guys, you weren't here for this one, but this is what happened one time. Like, that must have been really cool to finally let that story out. Because Jesus had told him, like, oh, don't tell anyone about this again. Wait until I'm gone. That shows up in the other accounts of it. So this whole package of what happens as they go up on the mountain to pray and the transfiguration. And then it's followed by this, come down and there's a boy with an unclean spirit and the father comes and he's like, I came to your disciples, they couldn't do anything about it, so could you please help? And then Jesus like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll help you. And he's come on, guys, figure it out. And so that kind of fits like this whole story. So the reason I want to include like those parts before, like feeding the 5,000, these parts after, is that this really, really reflects another story that shows up in the Old Testament. It reflects a similar pattern, a similar mold. Is when Moses goes up onto the mountain after crossing the Red Sea up onto Mount Sinai. We have this incredible miracle of the Israelites crossing the Red Sea on dry ground, of them being saved from their oppressors. And then we have this going up onto the mountain, and then we have this coming down from the mountain to the failure of the people as well. And so we see that similar pattern in what's happening right here, is this incredible miracle, this going up, this coming down to, it's not quite right. And that's when the law was given first to Moses, the 10 Commandments, the law that God gave to Moses. And here we have the similar thing happening, but the mold is shattered and made so much better because it's centered around Jesus. And so some other things, that this is why I don't like the 8 days. The 6 days fits with the story of Mount Sinai as well, is that there were 6 days before they went up onto the mountain. And so I don't know why Luke does 8 days. I dug into that a bunch and couldn't find it, but I welcome your interpretation of trying to find that as well. So we have that similar pattern. We have the Jesus being transfigured, this sparkly clothes and bright face. We see that with Moses as well. He comes down and his face was so bright for the people to look upon. He had to wear a veil. So we have that happening as well. And then with Jesus one, Moses is actually there. So kind of a cool connecting point there as well. So this is the part where I think the mold shattering moment happens though, is that they go up on the mountain, this incredible thing happens, and then from the cloud, we hear this is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him. Listen to him. What he says matters. What he says goes. And the cloud lifts, and Elijah and Moses are gone. So this is something I feel like I learned just recently. A significant moment of that is that Moses is a representation of the law throughout the Old Testament, and he was the one that wrote the law. He's the picture of the law. And so the Old Testament being made up of the law and the prophets, and then the writings and stuff too. And then Elijah being a picture of the prophets. So we have a representation of the law and the prophets. And then we have God himself in Jesus. And when the cloud goes away, the law and the prophets are gone. The law and the prophets aren't the thing that matters anymore. Jesus is what matters. And what he says goes. So if there's something in the law and the prophets that really fits with the way that Jesus teaches, then right on. Those glimpses were shining through of what God is really like, and it fits. But he is the final authority. The buck stops at what Jesus says. And we see that with God's voice speaking, this is my son. This is my chosen one. Listen to him. And then the others fading away. The mold's been broken. There's a new mold now, and it is Jesus. This is what God is like. And then this new mold, as it continues as well, right, is the new mold is God's love and salvation to us through faith in Jesus. That we receive grace through faith in Jesus. As simple as believing, not carrying out any of these actions that are outlined in the law, not through sacrifice, but through faith in Jesus. As simple as that, the new mold is set. And that's one of those permanent molds. That's what makes a Christian, if we had a little Christian machine, is that permanent mold of faith in Jesus is what makes a Christian, is what makes a person receive that grace. So Jesus as well even point out these that things are different. He talks about the wineskins of the Pharisees, and why aren't you doing these things like you should be doing? And it's things are different now. You don't put new wine into an old wineskin. If you love the old wineskins, you want to stick with that. That's not going to give you life, and you're going to be stuck. But the new is here. The new has come, and it is Jesus. This is the new mold. The new mold. Salvation by grace through faith, just simply believing. So that's one that has been remade, that will not need to be remade again. We don't have another Savior we're expecting that's going to change that. Jesus is the one. But we have this way that we interact with the world around us. We have this way that we tell others about Jesus. And that has changed through the generations. That has probably changed within a lot of your lifetimes of how we interact with the community around us. Even moving this church into town here, that was one of those sand casting mold difference. We're still gonna do church, but we're gonna do it just a little bit different. We're gonna be in the community, not apart, set out there. We want to be closer to the people that we want to reach to. We want to be a presence here for those that can come to know Jesus. Even so throughout church history, throughout the last few decades, things look different for how we tell people about Jesus. And that's one of those things that is going to continue to change. It's going to be one of those sand casting moments where let's do this for a while, and then you know what, we've got to shatter this thing, and we've got to do it a little bit different because people are changing, and we've got to figure out how we can meet those people with the gospel, with the good news of what Jesus is like. And the Holy Spirit is centered in that and working and helping us towards these new things. I think that's really cool. So that's kind of where we are today, is in this present. How do we show other people the love of Jesus? How do we show love to God, love to our neighbors, love to our enemies even, in the way that Jesus would want us to? Because that's the part where God's like, be creative. Figure this out. Jesus had said to Peter, I'm going to build my church on you, and the gates of Hades won't be able to stand against it. And that's this church that we get to do. We get to be the part of advancing against the kingdom of darkness with the kingdom of God. How cool is that? It's the picture that kind of comes to mind for me is like this barrel with God's kingdom overflowing out of the barrel, and it's as if the enemy is trying to plug all these holes where the kingdom's getting out, And then you're just like, we'll find a new goal. We'll find a new way to get God's love. We'll find a new way to show God's love and the gospel to other people. You can keep trying to plug those holes, but we're just going to get out. It's going to get out. It's not going to be stopped. Maybe even more as like an organic picture that Jesus used, like the mustard seed growing into a tree. But a tree that's growing, you can trim parts off, but it's going to keep growing. It's going to keep trying, sending out new shoots in different ways. And that's the kingdom of God. That's the kingdom of heaven, is advancing and growing and using people along with that. Because the Holy Spirit's like, hey, I got this idea I want you to try. And then someone tries it, and it grows in this way, and that works for a while, for a season, for a decade, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore, and the Holy Spirit's like, here, try this. See if you can connect with these people in this way. See if you can show love in this way. And it's not going to be held back. The church cannot be stopped. And that's the molds that we have to keep changing. Because the past has shaped us, and it affects how we live in the present, but we can't get stuck in what has shaped us and not let us be eyeing what God is doing at this time for those that are different than us and need God's love as well. So that's where I want to invite your creativity for us as a church. I'm not going to do this just for right. I won't pick your brain right now, but for us as a church, for us as a community, how do we creatively reshape that sandcasting so that we can show God's love to people? How can we continue to reach people with the message of the gospel? Because it has changed, it will continue to change. So how can we do that? And so I ask you this honestly because I believe the Holy Spirit is working in you as it is working in me. And you're going to have ideas that I'm not going to have, that you're going to be able to help put into place of ways that we're going to be able to help expand God's kingdom. And we'll work within whatever bounds and boundaries are put in place. Like, yep, we have to have a rope in the middle, a few extra things to get us to gather here as church. But look at that, we're here. We can figure this out. We're creative people. And God's working within us. And God's working within you. So don't hold that in. God puts an idea in your heart that just won't go away. That we can show God's love to other people and work through our church. Don't let that just sit with you. Let's find people around that, and let's do this as a church.